Apple just announced two new Mac Minis, and it's kind of funny because the cheaper one has a newer chip than the expensive one, which isn't a mistake. And by the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly which of these computers is the one for you to buy, or if you should honestly just skip this upgrade. There's two new Macs, the M6 Mac Mini that starts at $900 with 16 gigs of RAM and still 256 gigabytes of storage. Then there's the M5 Pro, which starts at $1,700 with 24 gigs of RAM and 512 gigabytes. If you look at them side by side, they look identical, but there are differences on the inside of them, and they both are gonna start shipping on September 22nd. Pre-orders are already open on both of them. And the two biggest standout features with the hardware differences are the fact that both of them now have Wi-Fi 7 and 2.5 gigabit Ethernet on back of them. Now you might be asking, why are the names backwards on this? Why is the M5 Pro more expensive than the M6? The number on any of the Mac chips is the generation, and the word after it is the tier. So M6 is a completely brand new generation of the chip, and the M5 Pro is the last generation of the bigger Pro chip. Apple always starts off with a small chip on a new manufacturing process because small chips come out of a new factory line with fewer defects, and the Pro and the Max chips are physically quite a bit bigger than the standard chips, so they always show up a generation behind. And the same thing happened with the M4 Max, Max Studio, and the M3 Ultra chip. Also, the M6 is Apple's first chip on a 2 nanometer process, which when you hear 2 nanometer, you think that measures the size of the chip. That's not actually anything on the physical chip. It's the fact that a computer chip is made of billions of microscopic switches flipping off and on, and that 2 nanometer number is really about how precisely a factory is able to build them. The smaller, more precise switches waste less power as heat, and less heat means the chip is able to run fast for longer before it has to back off on the power. So 2 nanometer is the newest manufacturing process on the planet right now, and Apple bought up more than half of the first supply. So the newer number on this means a newer design and not necessarily the chip being double the power as the older one. There's one real spec to look at when you compare these different chips: memory bandwidth. Most people tend to think of memory capacity, so that's how much storage or size it can actually hold. So you have 16 gigs of RAM, 24 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of RAM. But memory bandwidth is how fast you can actually move files across the RAM, and people mix these up all the time. It's the difference between these two machines, because the standard M6 chip starts at 153 gigabits a second of memory bandwidth, and it goes up to 170 gigabits of memory bandwidth if you go up to the 24 gigabyte model. With the M5 Pro chip, it comes in at 307 gigabits a second of memory bandwidth, which is almost double. Where does this actually matter? If you're editing video, every camera angle in a multicam timeline gets pulled out of the memory for every single frame. So if you're doing one 6K stream, then you're gonna be fine on either of them. But if you start to stack 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, the M6 is gonna start waiting on memory instead of working. And that's where you see the beach ball, or you just see frames getting dropped. Another area where the memory bandwidth is going to be super important is for local AI performance. Generating a single word means reading the entire model out of memory. So the speed of the memory on your computer is basically the speed of the model that you're able to run. Double the bandwidth should mean about double the words per second. And of course, you got to have enough capacity to hold these models, but you also need the bandwidth where it's able to access them faster. The biggest problem with these computers is the fact that the price has gone through the roof, because the M4 launched at $600 in 2024 with still 256 gigabytes of memory. And then in June of 2026, they raised it to $800. Now, just a couple months later, $900 for the new M6 Mac Mini. So $300 in under 2 years. And unfortunately, 256 gigabytes is still the base storage on this, which I really expected Apple to start these computers with 512 gigabytes, since the M5 MacBook Air now starts with 512 gigabytes. Also, if you want to get the 2 terabyte storage option, that's going to cost $1,000, which is kind of funny because the computer starts at just $900. My advice for you, if you're thinking about upgrading your Mac Mini, is put as much money as you can in the RAM, not the storage. And this pains me to say, because I still don't think 256 gigabytes is enough for anyone who's buying a desktop computer in 2026, but the memory is soldered in and it can never be added. With the M4 model of Mac Minis, people were finding a way to change the storage out. And of course, you can always put a nice Thunderbolt SSD in the back of your Mac Mini for a fraction of the price of upgrading the memory on the computer. So we're getting the M6 and the M5 Pro Mac Minis. And now the question is, which one should you buy? I'd say most people should just get the M6. This is gonna be awesome if you need a nice everyday laptop, desktop. It's gonna be great for editing. Use it as a home server. Or if you've still got an Intel Mac, this is gonna blow that thing out of the water. Also, it is the newer chip and it's gonna win on single core speed. It should be able to handle everything just fine. But upgrade to the M5 Pro if you do heavy multicam work, if you're doing anything 3D rendering, or if you want to run a lot of local AI models because of that double memory bandwidth and the fact that you can also add more RAM with the M5 Pro option if you'd like. Also, if you're looking at all the different options of the Mac Mini and you're thinking about different upgrades, the one I personally bought is the M6 Mac Mini with a 512 gigabyte SSD and 16 gigabytes of RAM. That one came in at about $1,200. My advice is if you're going to spend over $1,200, you really need to just consider going all the way up to the M5 Pro because you get the 512 gigabyte SSD and you get Thunderbolt 5 ports on it. And you also get 24 gigabytes right out of the box. So there's a couple of upgrades that are built into it. If you already have an M4 or an M4 Pro Mac Mini, I don't really think there's enough reason to upgrade and get this because the price is going to be so much more expensive to even match what you've already got in that computer. Also, if you consider speccing the M6 chip up to 32 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes, you're up to $1,500. The M5 Pro starts at $1,700, which is $200 apart. And at that price, the M5 Pro is the better machine, unless you really need 32 gigabytes of RAM for some reason over 24. But I would say the double memory bandwidth is going to be more valuable than having 32 gigs over 24. Also, if you're spending over $1,500 on a Mini, I would say just go for the M5 Pro. Unfortunately, I don't have either of these computers yet, but I'm really looking forward to trying out the M6 and the M5 Pro Mac Mini, and I've also got the M5 Max Mac Studio and the M5 Ultra on the way. I'll be comparing them to all the other M5 series of computers, as well as the M4 Mac Minis and Mac Studios. So be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos. If you've got any tests or questions, drop them down below and I'll answer them in future videos.